Good morning and welcome. We're going to go ahead and start. My name is Christina Gilbert, and I will be the host of your webinar today, No Barriers, Adjust Knowledge, Rethinking Exam Accessibility. We're really glad you can join us. This webinar is about something that is close to all of us, which is making exams fair and accessible for every test taker. The EU Accessibility Act is coming in June this year, and so accessibility is on everybody's mind. It's more important than ever to design assessments that don't leave anyone behind. We'll talk about what that really means practically and personally with insights from experts in assessment, accessibility, and a visually impaired student who experiences assistive technology firsthand. And now for the speakers. First up, we have Jeroen Habets. He is Cirrus's acting Chief Product and Technology Officer, and he'll open the session by exploring why accessibility matters, not just for compliance, but for fairness, quality, and impact. And then we'll hear from Alicia Rousseau. She's the visually impaired student from the University of Pretoria. In a short video, Alicia walks through what it's like to take a Cirrus exam with a screen reader. After that, we'll hear from Juan Erwee, who heads the Access, Disability, and Inclusive Services, or ADIS, at the University of Pretoria. Juan will give us a look at how accommodations are organized and what support is in place for students with disabilities. And then finally, we'll have Gaby Pretorius, a senior instructional designer at UP. She'll take us into the world of assessment design and how to design questions that are fair and accessible to all students. And then we'll go back to Jeroen, and he will get started with what you need to look at when you want to make your exams accessible. So thank you again for joining. And with that, I'll give the stage to Jeroen.
Because I wanted to start with what is accessibility. Because like me, I've worked in developing websites and applications for about 25 years. And so accessibility has always been a topic. And sometimes we forget, like, what is it? So maybe not all of people that they all know actually what they're coming for. So what is accessibility? Yeah, at the core, it's ensuring there are no barriers to anyone to use web applications. This was a bit theoretical. It was a good thing to do. You got told that. But I was actually not aware of the numbers. And in preparation of this, we looked through some numbers. And you see 1.3 billion people with a disability. You see that like 18% of American students report using assistive technology, although only 5% report a disability. So there's actually some people are actually missing from the stats. And if you put that number there, it's 80% of disabilities are actually invisible. And at the same time, we also see that we have a lot of people looking for to fill their job vacancies. A lot of companies are actually screaming for people. So we need to actually not just give a fair chance, which is important, but to the benefit for all, it's important that we give everybody a fair chance so we can use this potential to the fullest. Let's see. So I have talked about accessibility before, and it's like, yeah, but there was in healthcare in this particular example. It's like, yeah, but I'm developing trainings for heart surgeons. Why they should be able to see? So why should I care for screen reader support? It's a fair question. Maybe I will leave the audience to think about it for a minute before I give away the answer on the next slide. Okay, let's give it away. And so to put it bluntly, actually your life may be saved by a dyslexic heart surgeon, right? So if I look at myself, it's getting a bit personal because my daughter is dyslexic, but 5% of the population is actually dyslexic, and she actually needed to have a screen reader to get certain things read out for her, and that's why she was able to get good grades. And so she can see perfectly fine. She doesn't have the ambition, but she could maybe potentially be a very good heart surgeon. And but she would have to pass the test. And we're here in high-stake testing. So if we enable them to give everybody a fair chance, there is not only a fair and equal opportunity, but it actually is a benefit to us all. Yeah, so and then if I look at us from like a company, and maybe you're here on behalf of a company as well, so why does accessibility matter? I hope I've given some light on the first one. I think the primary goal should be intrinsic. I think I believe in corporate social responsibility and providing equal opportunity. But there are also other drivers, and one is maybe this is for some a reason to join. Is what you said already, like the European Accessibility Act is mandating accessible services, so people are worried about that and like, hey, what should I do? If the services that you deliver are in scope, you actually risk fines in like, what is it, 2-3 months time. And the other part is, and that's for instance for us, to be honest, it's also commercial, right? Even if we don't worry about it, but you guys worry about it, and you get compliance pressure, especially in the field of high stake testing and education, people want to have this covered because they see it as a risk. Yeah, and the last bit, and that's for instance in the case of Cirrus, we have a policy. We publish this accessibility statement. I put the link in there, but it's quite easy to find in our help center. So we actually have a commitment to produce accessible software. I can talk a lot about this thing at the end for like give real life pointers on how to get you started and all that stuff. I've put a brief agenda here, but I'm actually very excited to have UP here because just as you probably saw in the start, I was a project manager and they were a great customer. When I just joined, they joined as a customer, and they not only demanded accessibility, which other customers have, but they also really helped with making us accessible, finding key issues, not just having a checklist, but like, hey, this is the real impact. And the other thing is, and we're going to show that today, so that's why I'm very excited. I've learned a lot, by the way, the preparation to see we're really making a difference there. And the University of Pretoria enabled us to do that, and enabled me to have a role in that. And I'm very excited about that and very grateful. So let's give it to them because that, I think, is the key thing of today's seminar.
Hi, my name is Gaby Pretorius. I'm responsible to assist lecturers to use the Cirrus Assessment system at the University of Pretoria. I'm also involved in training lecturers to use the test system optimally and to make sure that their assessments are accessible for visually impaired test students and other types of students. Today we've set up a test for a visually impaired test taker, and we're going to observe her experience in taking the test using a screen reader.
My name is Juan Erwee. I am the manager of the Access, Disability and Inclusion Services, or ADIS, at university. I oversee our test venues in which we are able to assist students directly who make use of either assistive technologies or human support during assessments.
Hi, I'm Alicia Rousseau, a third-year student in computer science. I'm a visually impaired student here at ADIS. I lost my vision when I was grade 8, when I was 13 years old, and I don't know Braille, and I'm using NVDA as a daily screen reader.
For today's demonstration, I'm going to ask Alicia to do a test on the Cirrus system. She's using the NVDA screen reader she's mentioned, and for the benefit of our viewers, I just want to mention that we have slowed down the speed of the voice significantly. Alicia, if you could please enter the test and await further instruction.
The University of Pretoria commits itself to producing academic work of integrity. Start assessment button. Start. Enter PIN code dialog. Enter your PIN code.
I need a PIN code, please.
All right. The PIN code is 4437.
437. Question 1.
Okay, so Alicia is using navigation shortcuts to navigate to headings. In this case, the question number is labeled as a heading. This enables her to go directly to this without having to reread all of the information from the top of this page every time.
Essay question. You are the organizer of the National Science Fair for high school learners.
This question is easy enough to do. I can access the question on my own and access the text box on my own.
A quote trade fair quote is an exhibition organized so that companies in a specific industry can showcase and
Erwes.
This question is also fair because I can access the question and edit in the box.
Right, question 3 left paren, 2 points right paren, heading level 1. Drag and drop question. Drag the blue hotspot marker to the face left paren.
I cannot do this question since I cannot drag or drop something, and I also don't know where the left bottom is.
So this question is an example of something that is not accessible, especially to students who are visually impaired and blind. Orientation by visual references for very obvious reasons is not possible. And for those reasons, she would not be in any position to do this sort of question layout. Please proceed to the next one. The next question is an example of how this has been reformulated, where the same responses are expected from the student, but the presentation is just in a more accessible way.
Question 4. The Anaconda is a thrilling roller coaster ride featuring multiple loops and high-speed twists, creating an intense and thrilling experience for its riders. The emotion I feel before going on the Anaconda ride is scared, space, sad not selected, angry, tender not, excited not selected 6 of, combo box excited, happy. Look at the map of South Africa. Select the name of the province where the largest percentage of Zulu mother tongue speakers are originally from. Figure caption map of the 9 provinces of South Africa. Select the correct answer. Clickable radio button not checked northwest. Checked. Complete assessment.
Right, so Alicia has managed to complete the assessment. And now after on the final screens, she's also able to get feedback on her performance.
Thank you for completing this test.
And that is a very brief demonstration of how a blind student is able to take a test on this system. I think this is a very good demonstration specifically to highlight the different way in which it is approached. And I think perhaps people should visualize being able to do this with the screen switched off and only using sound. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alicia, for agreeing to do that, the recorded demo of your exam experience. Hi, Alicia. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. I was wondering if I could just ask you some questions that I had, and if anybody else wants to join in and ask you some questions, just pop that in the Q&A chat, and I can read them out loud to Alicia. But I was wondering, did you receive any formal training to use your screen reader, or was it more of a self-taught experience?
I did receive training for my screen reader since I went blind on an earlier stage in my life, or actually later stage. So I needed training how to use the shortcut keys since we do not use a mouse when using a screen reader. So that has been taught to me.
Thank you. How would you describe the experience of taking exams using the NVDA or other assistive technologies? Was it I assume there was a learning curve, and how intuitive is it?
It is definitely a learning curve, but it made me more independent, I would say, for answering questions on my own and be able to read the questions on my own, even though it may take a little bit more time than other students who can read on their own.
What are some of the other tools or settings that you rely on most when taking an exam? Is it just the screen reader? What other tools do you use?
I do use a screen reader most of the times, but because I'm a computer science student, there is some visual elements there. So for maths or statistics, I do have a tutor that is my reader or scribe.
What are some of the biggest challenges you face with taking exams or in your learning experience?
I would say that some questions isn't always accessible, meaning the screen reader can't read pictures or graphics. So that is quite a challenge sometimes to navigate around that.
And just one more from me, in case anybody else has any. I don't see anything, but what do you wish more people knew about navigating the digital world?
I think navigating the digital world will benefit everyone, not just those who are visually impaired or necessarily have a disability, but it would help everyone in the future to navigate more clearly.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and being able to, see your experience with taking exams. It was really interesting and eye-opening for sure. So thank you very much. And I am going to turn it over to Juan.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning, everybody. All right, so this is just quickly touching on what I will be speaking to, and then I will be handing over to my colleague. I will be handling the first 2 points on this list, where we focus directly on the types of services and also how we are able to ensure digital accessibility at the University of Pretoria. After that, I will be handing over to Gaby, who will be taking you through some very good examples and advice on digital accessibility in Cirrus specifically. The services we provide are quite varied. I've narrowed these, I think, to be very specific for today's discussion and how they apply to test takers, especially for digital tests such as those taken in Cirrus. So generally, we do provide a lot of services geared towards inclusion and accessibility for all student life activities, which includes the academic environment as well as any student life and extracurricular activities that take place at our campuses. In terms of tests, we offer support to a wide variety of students, which I will get into shortly. This, for the most part, would entail additional time. For probably the majority of our students, additional time is all they need, but we have a lot of unique cases, for a lot of different reasons, where there are significant barriers imposed by an impairment, where we then also need to take into consideration possible human support, which is typically what students are used to at school level before reaching us at the university. And then we really emphasize the use of accessible technologies, such as the screen reader you've seen in the video previously. And for these technologies, we really place a high emphasis on equipping our students to learn them, because this reduces their reliance on other people. Firstly, it increases independence, and it also ensures that we have very attractive job seekers who are graduating from our institution. This is some of our data from the first quarter for this year. And you can see this is very much in line with what Jeroen was telling us earlier. The one that you see there on the left, which is significantly higher than all the others, we've used very broad categories here, by the way, but those are typically your invisible disabilities, which includes conditions such as ADHD or dyslexia. At our institution, this is also reflected in our data, where you can see there is a clear majority for this type of impairment. This is just also for interest's sake. I've included some information on the spread for these students across our schools or our faculties. And IBIT, the one which has the majority, this is our faculty for engineering, the built environment and information technology. So a lot of our students are really going into scarce skills as well. And you can see there's clearly also a very good spread across the institution. These are just some images which show some of the additional things we also take into consideration. So digital accessibility is one aspect where we look at the Cirrus system or something like that. We have the computers there you see is the one that Alicia was using for her test. These are all equipped with the screen readers, such as NVDA or JAWS for Windows. We also have some venues with lighting where we have more control over the lighting. We are able to darken the venue significantly, and we then also adjust contrast for students who have different visual impairments. And contrast also, in some cases, assists students who have dyslexia as well. Then we also have individual offices or test rooms. These are used where students need to rely on speech or spoken tests and exams, where they would be either using speech typing or digital amanuensis, or working with another person who's assisting as a scribe. This is something that we are very proud of. Outside our facility, we also have a dedicated fenced-off garden area for service animals. This is also a place where our students who do have animals assisting them are able to go and relax. And this is fortunately also within range of our Wi-Fi, so they are also able to work while in there. In terms of our digital accessibility at University of Pretoria, it has become policy for us. So any new digital product which is being introduced is going through a rigorous screening process. And it is a requirement now that all these products do need to have AA WCAG compliance. These are universal standards which are freely available online. It's basically a list of guidelines and advice for developers to ensure the digital platform or the web platform is made accessible for all disabilities. And I believe Jeroen will also be speaking more to that later on. And then in addition to that, we work very closely with our developers or our service providers. That is where I come in with a team that we usually assemble within the ADIS, where we are able to test platforms or provide user testing, where we include people with various types of disabilities and who are using different technologies. And this is a very useful way of highlighting where improvements need to be made. And it ensures that when the final products are being rolled out, that we have a very high level of access to our clients and students. All right, and then that is all from me. I'm going to be handing you over now to my very capable colleague, Gaby Pretorius. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Jean. So I'm going to be taking you through assessment design considerations, which are very important to be aware of so that we can develop accessible questions. So very important is the need to know the specific need of your test taker in your group of students. So the list here is not limited to these impairments, but I'm going to touch on the broad categories of visually impaired disabilities, sensory processing, and physical disabilities. So just some guidelines for visually impaired students. It's very important to avoid asking questions requiring the use of a mouse, because students with a screen reader have to use keyboard shortcuts and they have to use the keyboard. So a mouse is a no-no. So avoid those type of questions. Then very important is to always add alt tags for images and media. And if you're struggling with this, you can use AI tools to generate your alt tags. So it makes it easier for you. And then very important is to include transcription. So if you have a video, you need to tell the student what is in that video. So you need to have anything that's spoken must be transcripted so that a student can read that with a screen reader. For students with sensory processing, Your questions need to be direct and concise. Avoid students having to scroll down, so avoid too much in the question. And obviously with that comes keeping screen clutter to a minimum. Then for students with physical disabilities who may struggle with motor control, your text and media should be large enough to read. So this is where if a student needs text much bigger, then they should take the test at Addis. But there's also in Cirrus, there's an option to increase the text size. So that's also very helpful. Then with respect to hotspot questions, the size of the selectable area should be big enough for a student to be able to click on that area. Then for students with hearing impairments, recorded speech should be transcribed to text, and you should include closed captioning for videos. We always need to keep the principles of effective assessment in mind, and specifically validity and fairness are very important principles to remember. So with respect to when you provide images, you need to think of, do I really need to provide this image? Because sometimes visual cues can give a question away. And with respect to validity, is your question assessing what it should assess? So those are very important considerations to keep in mind. Okay, so I'm going to take you through some problematic question types that a student who is a visually impaired student could possibly struggle with. The first of these is your drag and drop question. So the problematic question is in red. There's a box around the problematic question, and then the revised question has a green box around it to show how it can be revised to make it more accessible. So a drag and drop question is problematic because a student can't see the markers, and in this case, they can't see the image. So you could revise this to a select from list question. So in this case, because the question had 2 drag and drops, there are 2 select from the list blanks. And then it's possible for a student to take the test. And this is one of the questions which Alicia received in her test. A hotspot question is where students need to identify an area on the screen. And this question type is not fair to ask to a visually impaired student because they're not able to view the image. However, if you have students who are neurodevelopmental or have a hearing impairment, the visual cue could provide context and clarification. So your choice of questions really depend on the student's impairment. So that's why knowing your students is so important. All right, so what I want to ask you, this is an extended matching question where students have to match lines to connect the blocks. So I want to ask you if you see any problems with this question. Okay, so the problem with this question is that the image provided would give cues to your students without a visual impairment, and that would make this question not fair. Okay, so if you revise this question, it could be made into a single multiple choice question, and which focuses on asking one shape at a time. So what you need to consider here is the visual impairment of the student or the impairment, the principle of fairness, and for the purpose of fairness, it's advisable to remove the image. Okay, the matching question, I love this question type, but this question type is not fair to ask to a visually impaired student because they can't, once again, use the mouse to drag and drop the boxes to the right place. So this question could be revised to a select from the list question. And so if there's 5 options to drag and drop, you could have 5 select a blank. Okay, so also just keep in mind overload. So it's better to not ask your students too much at one point in time. And then you could also remove the image for the purpose of fairness. So the ordering question is also problematic. So what you could do is you could revise this question where you make it a multiple choice question with various ordering options. And then the students need to select the right one. Okay, so this is also like a very nice question type. It is doable for a student taking the test with a screen reader. However, it would take time for visually impaired students to do this question. What makes it more difficult is the scroll bars and the multiple pull-down menus. So it's very important that you are fair to your students by providing them enough time. So you could give more time for your students who are visually impaired to answer this question. And then it's very important, once again, to know your student, so that you know if you can ask this question or not, because it is a lot of information on one screen. So for your students with sensory processing, it might be too much. The question types we recommend then for focusing specifically on a visually impaired test taker are multiple choice questions, multiple response, select a blank, fill the blank, numeric and essay questions. And the wonderful thing about essay questions is that you can really test higher order thinking skills. And that's very possible for a student with a screen reader to do. Okay, so to conclude, I love this, the principle of the curb cut effect, which is when we design for disabilities, we make things better for everyone. And I just love the fact that if you make a curb, then everybody can use it and you're not discriminating against anyone. So yeah, in this image, you've got a curb and a person in a wheelchair can use it, a person with trolley, a cyclist, or a mommy pushing her baby in a pram. So it really is accessible to everyone. Okay, so I would like to acknowledge our Alicia Rousseau for her willingness to be our test taker, and our colleague Andre Duplessis for producing the video. And thank you for this opportunity. Every time I always learn so much, especially from Alicia and from her experience as our test taker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gaby. I think Juan already mentioned it, that when you select software, that's, I think, important. It's about test software, but actually for me, a lot of things that we've shown today is not just for test software, it's for any software that you use. I would say required to, and I've put the numbers there, this WCAG, that's a standard, but then at level 2.1, at least level AA. And I mentioned that 2.1 because actually this standard, I think 1.0 is maybe like 20, 30 years, no, but at least 20 years old, I think. And what you see is that the web has developed a lot, and also the accessibility technology has developed a lot. So I would say 2.1 is great. And that's, by the way, in case you're interested, that's also the one that is now in this European directive. You could also consider, by the way, to go to 2.2. That's the version that we released in 23, and it might be a bit more future-proof. And by the way, an interesting bit about that is that it has specifically something for drag and drop in there. Another point there is that the help always has to be at the same place, which is, I think, an example of the curb cut effect. It's here for accessibility, but I think everybody in their life has already looked for this help button. Where is it this time? It's actually in the accessibility standard. And we see, of course, that at University of Pretoria, they have great facilities. It's really, I call it like the gold standard. But we also have customers that have less of these facilities. And for those, if you're interested, if you lack screen readers in particular, but also, so like sometimes you have test takers that like to have things read out for them. We have an add-on that's called Read Speaker. I put the logo up there and the link, but you can just contact our sales. It's something that is an add-on to Cirrus, and you can just enable it, and it's available to every test taker afterwards. And then And I have this slide because if you look at the standard, it has 86 criteria, which is a lot. So you can easily find those. I have pointers there as well. But if you look at the nitty gritty and to get you started, I would say a lot of it has already been in this video. So I would say, first of all, support screen readers. We have talked about the alt text of images. We have talked about the transcript or subtitles. Here it was, Gaby mentioned videos, but please also, if you use audio, just pure audio, then don't forget to transcribe those too. Then those two, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. In bold, I've marked the ones that are particularly interesting for authors to take into consideration, because, for instance, the next one, the clear document structure, is a bit of a mixed bag. If, especially in exams, normally you don't have long text. If you were to produce long text, then you have to use H1s and H2s for sections and not bold. The other part is, of course, that in Cirrus, for instance, that the question title is highlighted as an H1 is actually something that Cirrus does for you, right? So it's also, that's more the responsibility for the software. It's definitely true for the next one. So labeling of form fields, right? That's, for instance, means that a screen reader knows that the password field is the password field, right? That's one key thing. And the other one is about vision impairment, color blindness is a bit, of course, on top of the screen reader. It's a color contrast. It's a big thing, right? There are online contrast checkers. If you don't have the link, you can just Google online contrast checker and you find it. If the contrast is not big enough, then people have trouble reading it. The other thing is, do not rely on color alone. Examples: right answer green, wrong answer red. Well, we do that still, but we also add a check mark for green for the right answer and a cross for the wrong answer. And I think also Gaby mentioned a couple of times that the responsive design, that you can use it on different devices, but also that you can zoom. It's very important. Also, that, of course, is something that you as an author don't need to worry about. The previous two, you do have to make sure that you're doing that. Because should be taken care of by your software. And then the motor impairment, keyboard navigation. Again, if you take care of the previous ones, the software should take care of that. And I think Gaby mentioned also this click area large enough. Part of that is in software. For instance, if we design these multiple checkboxes, I don't know if you remember, but in the past you sometimes had these websites where only the checkbox was clickable. And of course, you should have the whole answer, including the text and a little area around, clickable, and it makes it so much easier to use. Again, I love this thing. Gaby introduced it to me, this curve cut effect. I think this is a great example. And what can you do yourself? Well, again, we have the gold standard, which is how Juan and his team are doing it, which is with real test takers. But I can imagine that there are people in this webinar that don't have a whole accessibility lab. And I think it's, for me, important with the previous point and this one to get people started. Because if you just take these things into account in your way of working, without extra effort, you can achieve a lot more accessibility. And there is a free available tool. In this case, there are also paid tools, by the way, but this one is for free. It's a browser extension. I'm showing here the result for the Cirrus logging page. And then if I brief others on this, I see as a success criteria, you should not have any errors, must. Right? Sometimes there are false positives, then you should be able to explain them away, but normally you should have no errors. You should have no alerts, ideally. You must have, and that's the thing, if you look at the tab there, it says order. It will show you, this tool will then show you the keyboard order. You can, of course, always also use tab to do that, but I like this tool for that. Make sure it's sensible, have a sensible structure. That's something that I learned from preparing this webinar. that I knew that this was being a pointer for navigation, but I also learned from Alicia that she actually can use keyboard shortcuts to immediately go to a certain heading. Great stuff. So thanks, Alicia, for that one. And also, if you turn the styles off, right? So then it will show you the bare bones text version of the page, and it will show you how it gives you a sense of how it would look, be the experience for somebody who uses a screen reader. And again, I'm not saying that this is the gold standard, but this should really get, if you follow these tips, you would already get, I think, most of the accessibilities you will spot with this one. And then, it's also my joy to talk a little bit about the roadmap, right? Because we have something I put in dark red there. It's not very accessible, but anyway, the left is the key thing. Is our accessibility commitment that what we develop, we test for accessibility, and also we're not perfect, right? So if we have a issue reported by you that's impeding candidates, we are committed to quickly fix it. And and again, I want to express my deep gratitude for UP on really raising the bar for us on this one and helping us, including with the impact. Because that's also for us, for the team, they know now what they're doing it for. So thanks for that. Oh, but then, of course, the new exciting thing, we've been working on that, I think, maybe literally not a year, but almost a year already for the new candidate delivery. It's a huge feature. And one of the key parts is actually accessibility. One is responsive design. So it is now workable on also mobile and tablets besides PCs. And it's the current one is already allowing you to zoom in and out, but we take this as a key design feature as well. One other nice thing, I think it's again a curb cut example, dark mode for high contrast. And to be honest, I don't know how you guys are in there, but I love dark mode. So it's needed for visual impaired, like I said below, but it's liked by many. And the other part that we're doing is not per se accessible, I suppose, but it's the offline mode. Of course, Cirrus is already quite resilient to offline, but if you have any videos or there are things that are not able to use in offline mode, and now we're going to go for full offline mode. You can just continue doing the whole exam, including any questions, any media that's required, resources in the new version. And that's coming soon. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but we're actually wrapping up development, but we have a huge test phase ahead of us. So I'd expect something near the next quarter for that to know more.
Yes, thank you very much, Jeroen. Thank you, Juan and Gaby and Alicia for your presentations. Now I'm going to open it up to the floor. If you have any questions for our lovely presenters, please pop them in the chat. I am going to field a question to Juan. How do you deal with last-minute requests or students who don't disclose their needs until it's almost too late? How do you accommodate those students?
Yeah, this is a bit of a challenging one. We fortunately don't get this very often, but we do have contingencies in place. So our students work on consultation basis. We have a walk-in service, and we are fortunately able to make emergency arrangements. And I think Gaby can also attest to this, that this has absolutely happened a few times, even in the recent past. But yeah, and I also maybe should emphasize there is a bit of a process. You know, students aren't just simply provided with accommodations. So that means that we do have resources put aside for these late applications, where we are able to process and make the proper recommendations and bookings and getting the test set up. I think in extreme cases, this is done within 24 hours.
Good morning. For candidates who are most comfortable reading Braille, can electronic Braille displays be used?
I'll take this one. Absolutely, yes. We do use refreshable Braille displays. In our institution, This is very useful, especially for languages not supported by the screen readers, and also where we have many students coming from school education, where they've been using mostly human support. So we go through a transition phase where we have to do a lot of training. So the Braille does come in very handy during such times for us.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we have another comment. Great session. We absolutely need to create tests that are accessible for all. But could this lead to less innovative or exciting questions? Gaby, I think that's a question for you.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, this is a challenge, and I hear I share the same concern. So, yeah, this is why you need to know your students. If you don't have students with with impairment, then you can use all your question types. But we do have to remember that we need to accommodate the students, and the students with impairments, and it is so critical that they are given the opportunity to take a test. So it is tricky, but we do need to remember and accommodate our students.
I've already mentioned before, right, that also accessibility is technology, and it moves, right? So it's if I look at when I started, where you were not allowed to use any JavaScript, where you were not allowed, so any interaction, that was all not possible because but we're now seeing that with this new standard, for instance, in the new 2.2 drag and drop, they're also looking at something for that. Of course, you cannot say drag this on the left bottom corner. That's not possible. But in the future, you can use a drag and drop question if you take disability into consideration. So it's also I say that it's a continuously developing area.
If I could also maybe add to that, I would also venture and even say that the accessibility inclusion in products in itself is creating a lot of innovation, where recently even this is extended even to the gaming industry, where mainstream video games, for example, are implementing accessibility features which make these products available to a larger population. And I think if that approach is followed, where open minds are kept, that I think the whole process of thinking in very outside the box does really potentially mean that interesting ways of doing things could be identified.
Yeah, maybe I can add one more thing. It's for instance also on these pictures, right? So one idea is that you can remove the picture, because some pictures are just purely, visual sugar. They don't have any semantics. And actually, what I advise people, then you can keep the picture, but then just give it an empty alt text, right? So it's because, for instance, I have this question where it's about communication, and they using a picture of two people chatting away in a cafe. It's nice, but it doesn't have anything to do other than, for us, illustrating is about communication, but the heading above the question is communication anyway. So it doesn't really add semantics. Then just give it an empty alt text. You can still use a picture, but give it an empty alt text, because I think that's another risk that I've seen, that people actually have a piece of text, then a picture depicting the same semantics, and then repeating the text. I think that's probably, I can ask Alicia, but it's probably very annoying, because then you get it read twice. If it's exactly the same semantics, then just give it an empty alt text, because it's, and with the empty one, don't say no alt text, but an empty one, you even can say to tools like, hey, we thought about it, and we consciously decided to not add an alt text here, because we think it's not important. Sorry, I see Juan nodding, so that's a good sign for me.
Oh, that's really good advice. Yeah, I was actually that was going to be my next question, was from a product or a platform perspective, what's the biggest challenge to meet accessibility standards?
Well, Actually, I think one is the effort, right? So you need to test for this. I think that's because we have it in our way of working. So our whole engineering team is trained on this. But yeah, with everything you need to test if that's done. So that's part. But actually, I think the main challenge for me was, is it worth the effort? That's it. And I think yes, it's worth the effort, and not just from this whole commercial thing, like people requiring it, because that's what I love about UP. They didn't just demand it like, hey, this is a checkbox you have to check, right? They first of all they helped us by giving real impact, like not just a theoretical, oh, you missed 2 or 3, but no, this and this happened, and that's why this test taker couldn't proceed, and that's how we came up with a very nice, accessible, and Cirrus candidate delivery already in the first version. We're gonna improve it more, but it is at the moment already accessible, thanks in no less part to UP. And I think the key part is understanding why you're doing it. That's for me, I think, the key challenge.
I think maybe also, again, sorry if I'm speaking too much, to add to that again, a challenge is if these are implemented retroactively on an existing product, then it becomes quite challenging. My recommendation would be that it is a ground-up approach. We have found or experienced that many digital products are developed from templates which are existing and then modified for the end user or clients. When these template applications have been designed with these standards in place, then implementing these things are very easy. And it's a case of learning how to do things slightly differently. Then it will ensure accessibility is in place on all future products. Otherwise, you'll be patching holes in a leaking boat constantly.
I think we have another question. This one is for Juan. We often notice that students who are given extra time from their concession letters do not necessarily use the extra time. Some actually finish earlier than the normal scheduled period. Does this mean that the particular assessment is user-friendly and accommodates all student needs, or that the concession is added as an additional support for just in case?
I think this would depend on the impairment, first of all. It's difficult to give an umbrella answer to, at our institution, we evaluate each student on their specific needs and the very specific barriers that are imposed because of an impairment they have. If it's a case where the students aren't always needing the additional time, this is a good indication that things are accessible. The additional time in many cases is a safety net which is put in place where students need to spend additional time on compensatory practices or alternative methods of accessing information. But this is not necessarily always the case. So it's very important to understand that it would really depend on the individual.
Well, we have one more question here. Do you have any recommendations for obtaining support for installing or offering accessibility tools within a higher ed institution? Are there any tips on how to overcome objections from colleagues or the board? That's one for either Gaby or Juan.
Perhaps the country or the location would differ. With us, this is a practice and a policy that is in place. So institutionally, we do have policies in place which mandate us to provide these services to students. And likewise, in the workplace, there are other legislations in South Africa, for example, in place mandating employers to provide accommodations to their employees. In terms of technical aspects of installations and that, with us, we have very specific service providers. We also have people who trained in using these. For example, myself at our institution, I'm responsible for doing this on our student-facing products. But the service providers who are offering the technologies for purchase would also have technical support where they are able to advise or even provide personnel who could assist with the installations if that's needed.
May I add something? Yeah. I think actually maybe this question is also why I started the webinar the way I did. I think also here it's also quite a bit on the why. For instance, it's an anonymous attendee, so we don't know the subject matter. But for instance, in healthcare, everybody needs to be able to see. So why care about this? But people don't know the numbers, don't know the real impact this has. And the other thing, so I think one is intrinsic. If you can show, hey, I have now people successfully in their career because I actually put this in place during the exams. That's a great pointer, of course. But the other part, and I think Juan has also alluded to, it also often helps with policies, with also regulations. Unfortunately, at the moment in the EEA, it's not specifically mentioning education yet, but I'm convinced it's coming. It will come at some point. And the other part is that if you want to basically start with accessibility, you can have the gold standard of UP, but with little changes in the way of working, just a bit of knowledge and awareness, you can already change a lot on accessibility. And that's I think as well what I try to do at the end. You don't need to have a 10 score. If you already score a 7, which I'm using Dutch scoring, by the way, I hope it makes sense, but like a B in American, that would already help a tremendous amount of students. And it's so easy. If you just get it in your work, it's hardly any extra work.
Very good. Well, I think that about wraps up this wonderful webinar. I really do appreciate, again, thank you so much to Alicia for sharing her experience. Thank you so much to Gaby and Juan from the University of Pretoria. You had so many good insights and really helpful tips. And thank you to Jeroen for participating and giving us how to get started with accessibility. It was all really interesting and very helpful. I think well, I don't want to put y'all on the spot, but I think there's could be enough for another couple of webinars as well over this. I mean, there's just so much information, there's so many tips, there's so much to take into consideration when making exams accessible. And I thank you so much for participating. And if you have any other questions that we didn't get to, I didn't see any in the chat, but if you have any that you think about afterwards, just send them in the email and our participants will answer them. So thank you very much. And thank you for showing up and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.